Send me $1,600 for prom. Mom says you have plenty. My sister's kid texted. I replied, work for it. Minutes later, my sister wrote, pay or you're cut off. That night, I canceled their mortgage auto pay. By 8:05 a.m., they were blowing up my phone. But when I read the message, I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe the audacity. It was like watching someone walk into your house, take your wallet off the counter, and then ask if you had change for a 20. Send me $1,600 for prom. Mom says, you have plenty. That was it. No greeting, no explanation, just a casual demand from Caleb, my sister's 17-year-old golden child, as if I were the family's personal funding department. And the part that really hit me, the part that made my stomach go cold, was the second sentence. Mom says, you have plenty. So Shirley was behind it. It wasn't even the money. I could have covered it without blinking. It was the assumption, the entitlement, the complete lack of boundaries from a kid I barely even speak to unless there's a price tag attached, and from a sister who somehow managed to rewrite history in her head every few months so that I owed her something new. It wasn't that long ago, maybe 10 months, that I'd paid Caleb's first-year college tuition, 15 grand. Everyone begged me, my parents, my uncle, even Shirley's husband Drew. They all said it was just a one-time thing, that he needed a fresh start, that Shirley had done her best. But life was hard and I could help, so why wouldn't I? I did it quietly. No strings attached. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be the last time. So this felt like a turning point. I texted back one line, work for it. I didn't explain, didn't justify it. I just hit send and put my phone down. And I swear for the first time in years, I felt like I'd finally taken my hand off the hot stove. Not 5 minutes later, Shirley texted me herself, pay, or you're cut off. Just like that. No context. Like she thought she still had that kind of power over me. As if my world would shatter if she suddenly stopped speaking to me. It was wild. I sat there rereading it, feeling something snap into place in my brain. Not anger, just clarity. That night, I logged into my bank account and canceled the auto payments for their mortgage. I'd been covering it for over half a year after Shirley said Drew had some kind of emergency surgery and couldn't work. I never saw a hospital bill, never asked for one. I just paid it because that's what I'd always done. Shirley needed. He gave. That was the rhythm of our relationship. At 8:05 the next morning, I had 5 missed calls. Shirley, Drew, even one from my mom. I let them all go to voicemail. Then came the texts. First confusion, then insults. Caleb said I was just another fake aunt who doesn't support dreams. Shirley accused me of abandoning family. Drew, who usually stayed out of it, asked if there was some sort of mistake. I didn't respond to any of them. And then Shirley sent me a voicemail. I played it once, just to make sure I'd heard her right. You think this is over. You just made yourself the enemy of the family. Enemy, not sister. Not the person who paid for her son's education. Not the one who covered her bills for over a year. Just a villain now because I finally said no. It should have made me mad. Instead, it made things very, very simple. She wanted a war. She was going to get one. By the time I finished my morning coffee, Shirley had already fired her first public shot. Her Facebook status was a vague, passive-aggressive masterpiece. Funny how the people with the most to give are the first to withhold. Betrayal always comes from those closest. Lesson learned. Dozens of likes. A string of comments from her usual backup dancers. Mostly old classmates, women from her book club, and people she hadn't seen in years. All commenting things like, "You deserve better, babe," and "Cut the toxicity out." One woman I didn't even recognize wrote, "Family is just a word. Protect your peace." It was laughable. None of them knew who she was really talking about, but I did. And judging by the way my cousin Rachel texted me a screenshot with a popcorn emoji and the words, "Guess someone didn't get their prom money," so did she. So, I didn't respond. I wasn't going to feed it. I told myself I wasn't even surprised. This was Shirley's favorite game, victimhood with a spotlight. I'd seen it before. When her landlord evicted her, she had no warning. When Drew lost his job, she sacrificed everything. And when Caleb didn't get into NYU because the system is rigged, there was always someone to blame, and it was never her. But I could feel something shifting. And I think she felt it too, because that same afternoon, she sent a group text, not just to me, to the entire family. She wrote, "It's heartbreaking to realize how easily some people throw you away when they're done using you for their own ego. I hope no one else in this family ever finds themselves abandoned like I have." I sat there staring at my phone, waiting for someone to respond, not because I needed them to defend me. I was long past that, but because I was curious, because I wanted to know how much of this family still bought into her drama. Nothing. Not one response. Not from our aunts. Not from our cousins. Not from anyone. Just silence. That told me everything. Later that night, I got a call from our mom. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask what happened. She just jumped right in. She said, "Shirley is very upset. She says you humiliated her in front of Caleb, and that this has caused a huge rift between him and Drew." I asked what humiliation she was talking about. All I did was tell her son to work for his prom money. Our mom just sighed and said, "I don't want to get in the middle of this. I just wish you two would stop fighting." But this wasn't a fight. A fight happens between equals. This was me drawing a line, and Shirley throwing a tantrum because she couldn't cross it anymore. I told her I'd already paid for Caleb's entire freshman year of college and that I had nothing left to give. She got quiet. Then she said something that surprised me. "You've done enough, but she's going through a lot." It sounded like sympathy, but it felt like a crack in her armor. Our mom has always defended Shirley. Always. But this time she didn't scold me or beg me to fix things. She just sounded tired, like maybe she was finally starting to see it. The next day, Drew called me. That was unexpected. He's usually the quiet one in all this. Polite, reserved, way too checked out of the chaos. His message was simple. "Hey, I saw the mortgage payment didn't go through. Is everything okay?" I didn't reply. I figured if Shirley wanted to paint me as the villain, she could explain to her own husband why their mortgage was suddenly bouncing. Let her do the work for once. What nobody knew, not Drew, not my mom, not even Rachel, was that I'd been sitting on a nuclear option. About a month ago, Shirley and I had a phone call that spiraled. It was supposed to be about Caleb needing money for textbooks, but she got comfortable and careless. Said some nasty things about everyone, including our mom. She called her a burden. Said she was useless, unless there was food or a holiday involved. I'd never repeated it. Until now, it hadn't felt necessary. But the moment she called me the enemy of the family, the moment she tried to pit everyone against me after all I'd done, that changed everything. She wanted me to be the villain. Fine, but if I was going to play that role, I was going to burn the script she wrote and write my own. The voicemail from Drew came 2 days later. His voice was calm, but something about it felt different. Tighter, measured. He said he wanted to talk privately. I knew what it was about. The mortgage. Shirley's storm. Maybe both. I didn't respond right away. I sat on it for a few hours, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to make sure I wasn't acting from spite. What I was sitting on wasn't gossip. It was a truth bomb that would wreck a marriage. And for years, I told myself it wasn't my business. But that was before Shirley made me her personal villain. Before she weaponized Caleb. Before she tried to turn the whole family against me with one group text and a few dramatic status updates. So, I called Drew back. We didn't waste time. He asked if I'd canceled the mortgage autopay. I told him yes. He asked why. I told him the truth. The prom money, the tuition, the pressure, the manipulation. And then I paused. He was quiet for a second, then said something I didn't expect. "Honestly, I don't blame you." He said he knew things had been off for a long time, but he didn't know how bad it had gotten between me and Shirley. I could hear it in his voice. He was trying to piece it together, trying to decide if this was just a financial rift or if it went deeper. So, I gave him what he wasn't ready for. I told him about the guy. Shirley had mentioned him in passing during that same phone call where she trashed our mom. She said something about needing a break from Drew. Said she'd been talking to someone who actually listens. I pressed her, and she got flippant. Said it was just a friend, someone from her gym. I didn't think much of it at the time, honestly. Just another one of her little emotional detours. But a few weeks later, Rachel saw her at a restaurant downtown with him. It wasn't subtle, and it wasn't just once. 2 more times after that. Different places. Always on nights she said she had yoga or a girls' night. Rachel told me because she thought Drew deserved to know. I told her it wasn't our place. Now it was. I didn't go into detail with Drew. I just told him I thought he should know that Shirley hadn't been entirely honest with him. That he might want to look at the nights she'd been busy. That if he had questions, he shouldn't ask me. He should ask her. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just said, "Thank you," and hung up. An hour later, Shirley called me 5 times in a row. I didn't answer. Then she started texting. "What did you say to Drew? Why are you doing this? You don't know the whole story." And then, "He just blew up my life. Are you happy now?" I didn't respond to that one either. I just stared at it because that was the first time I realized she wasn't playing anymore. This wasn't her usual pity parade. She was actually panicking. The next day, I got a message from my Aunt Joan. Just a simple, "Heard what's going on. I'm proud of you." Then from my cousin Ellie. About time someone stood up to her. And then my dad called. Said he was hosting a dinner next weekend. Said everyone was invited except Shirley. I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. Shirley had always believed that if she got loud enough, dramatic enough, manipulative enough, she could control the narrative. But now, the narrative was out of her hands. 3 days after I spoke to Drew, everything went quiet. No texts, no calls, not even a cryptic post on Shirley's Facebook. That alone should have been suspicious, but I was too exhausted to care. I assumed she was regrouping, trying to figure out how to spin the truth into another version that made her look like the wounded hero. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, as usual. A few minutes later, the transcription came through. It was Caleb. He sounded nervous, not angry like before. His voice cracked when he said he needed to talk. That things were bad at home. That Drew wasn't speaking to his mom. That he'd overheard them yelling. And then his dad left and didn't come back that night. Then he said something I didn't expect to hear from him in a million years. "I think I need to get out of here." This was the same kid who called me a fake aunt, who demanded $1,600 like I was Amazon Prime. The same one who once told me college was just a formality because he'd be a millionaire by 25 no matter what. And now, he was asking for help. I didn't know what to do with that. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Let Shirley deal with the golden child she'd raised. But another part of me, maybe the part that still remembered holding him when he was a toddler, said to call him back. So I did. We talked for 20 minutes. It was awkward. He didn't apologize outright, but he danced around it. Said he didn't really get what was going on, and that he just repeated what his mom told him. He sounded more like a kid than I'd ever heard him. He said Drew hadn't come home in 2 days. That Shirley cried all night, then screamed at him in the morning. That nobody was talking to them. That mom keeps saying everyone betrayed her. Then he dropped something that made me sit up. He said, "She told me Grandma's dead to her." I blinked. "What?" I asked him to repeat it. He said it again, quieter. "She said Grandma's dead to her, and that you'll get what's coming to you." That's when I realized Shirley wasn't spiraling. She was imploding, and dragging her son down with her. I asked Caleb where Drew went. He said he didn't know, but his dad packed a bag and took a folder full of documents from the office drawer. That stopped me cold. I knew what was in that drawer. Their mortgage paperwork, their tax forms, their marriage certificate. Drew wasn't just leaving. He was preparing for war. That night, Shirley finally broke her silence. She sent me a long, chaotic text thread that started with how I poisoned her family, moved into how the entire family always favored me, and then somehow landed on how this was exactly like high school when I stole her boyfriend. For the record, I didn't. He came to prom with me after she ghosted him for 2 weeks straight. But apparently Shirley had been stewing on that for over 20 years, just waiting to use it as a final bullet. I didn't reply. Instead, I called my dad and told him everything Caleb said. He was quiet for a while, then said, "She's going to blame you until there's no one left to listen." And I asked him, what if she pulls Caleb in deeper? What if he starts to believe it again? He paused, then said, "Then it's time to show her what consequences feel like." So, the next morning, I made a phone call I never thought I'd make. I contacted the university's financial office and formally rescinded my tuition payment, $15,000. Gone. Legally, I had the right. The school confirmed that since I paid it directly and it hadn't been fully dispersed yet, I could retract it. The money would return to my account within 2 weeks. That night, Caleb called again. He was panicking. He'd just gotten an email from the university saying his payment had been revoked and he'd need to resolve the balance or risk losing his enrollment. I didn't yell. I didn't say "I told you so." I just said, "Actions have consequences, Caleb. I hope this teaches you something." He didn't respond, just went quiet, and then hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time, knowing what was coming next. Because Shirley had just lost her marriage, her reputation, and now her golden child's future. And for once, she couldn't spin it into someone else's fault. Not this time. By Friday, Shirley had disappeared from every platform she used to use like a megaphone. Her Instagram, gone. Facebook, deactivated. Her Pinterest board, full of vision board energy and wine-stained quotes about forgiveness, vanished. That woman lived online. If she was silent, it meant she wasn't just embarrassed. She was cornered. At first, I thought maybe she was regrouping, planning a comeback, probably lining up a new sob story about how I stole her life. But then I got a call from Ellie, whispering like we were in some crime novel. "You're not going to believe this," she said. Shirley showed up at Grandma's. Now, keep in mind, Grandma's house is 2 hours away in a quiet neighborhood where nothing ever happens. Shirley hadn't been out there in over a year. She always said Grandma was stuck in 1982 and smelled like mothballs and canned corn. But now she was on her doorstep, unannounced, holding a bottle of wine and shaking. Grandma let her in, of course. She stayed maybe 15 minutes, sat on the couch crying about betrayal, family loneliness, and how no one understands what it's like to be hated by your own blood. Then, according to Grandma, she wiped her eyes, poured wine back into the bottle, who does that, and left. I asked Ellie if Drew had officially left. She hesitated, then said he hadn't just left. He'd taken documents from the office drawer. I knew that drawer. That's where they kept the mortgage agreement, tax returns, bank statements, Caleb's birth certificate, even a prenup Shirley pretended didn't exist. Then Ellie said, "You might want to sit down. Drew hired a lawyer." She paused, and he called me. Ellie had interned at a family law firm last summer. A good one. Drew had tracked her down through LinkedIn. Not to pull strings, just to ask for a recommendation. But still, it hit hard. Shirley had always made Ellie feel like the soft one in the family, the one who would never make it in the real world. Now Ellie was the one helping her husband divorce her. That was the day it became real. Shirley wasn't spiraling. She was sinking, and she didn't know how to swim without dragging someone down with her. Then Caleb called again. His message was shaky. You could hear it in his voice. He said Drew had left and wasn't coming back, that he didn't want to be in that house anymore, that Shirley had completely lost it. Then he said the words I never expected to hear from him. "I don't care about the tuition, I just want out." This was the same kid who'd once told me college didn't matter, because he'd be a CEO by 24. Now, he sounded like a teenager again, confused. tired, and scared. I didn't sugarcoat my reply. Then do better. No apology. No lecture. Just the truth. He didn't respond. That weekend, the family dinner at my dad's house finally happened. Everyone showed up. Aunts, uncles, cousin. My mom came too, which surprised me. She brought a homemade pie like nothing was happening, like there wasn't a nuclear cloud hovering over the family. But what struck me most was the atmosphere. It was calm. No tension. No passive-aggressive digs. No Shirley walking into the room late and loud, turning every story into her own. Just people talking, eating, laughing. It had been years since I'd felt that much ease in a room with my own family. Later, while I was washing dishes with my mom, she asked quietly. She said terrible things about me, didn't she? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She nodded slowly, her hands still in the dishwater. I could see it in her face. The realization that Shirley had burned the last bridge she thought would always be there. On Tuesday, I got a message from Rachel. Caleb's moved in with Drew. Just like that. He'd packed his things, left Shirley's house, and walked out without a fight. Rachel said Drew was handling everything quietly, focusing on the custody case, staying calm, and letting Shirley unravel on her own. I didn't know what shocked me more. That Caleb had finally seen the light. Or that he didn't try to guilt his way back into my good graces. Maybe, for the first time, he understood the damage his mother had done. Or maybe he just realized that being her golden child meant drowning with her. A few days later, I got the official confirmation from the university. The $15,000 refund was processed and returned to my account. Simple. Done. That same night, Rachel texted me, "Family dinner again next month? You in?" "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. Shirley wasn't invited. Caleb wasn't there either. Neither was Drew. They were dealing with lawyers, paperwork, and a woman who'd spent years burning every rope handed to her. For the first time in a long time, the house felt like a family again. And the part no one ever said out loud, the part that hit me hardest, was this. I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. The next dinner was at Rachel's place. Same people. Same vibe. A little more laughter this time. A little less hesitance. The food was potluck again. Someone brought ribs. Someone else brought 2 bottles of red wine. And Rachel made that ridiculous baked mac and cheese that has no business being that good. This was the first real family reunion we'd had in years that didn't involve Shirley crying in a bedroom, or Caleb storming off, or Drew quietly drinking in the corner while pretending not to be miserable. They weren't there. None of them. And no one asked why. The unspoken truth sat with all of us like an extra chair at the table. We were better like this. Lighter. Calmer. More honest. It wasn't that we didn't love them. It's that we finally accepted what loving them had cost. My mom was the only one who still mentioned Shirley. She didn't say much. Just asked if anyone had heard from her, which was a polite way of asking me if I had. I told her no. That was true. But what I didn't say was that I had heard from Caleb twice. The first time, he texted a photo of himself at a job fair. He'd shaved off that ridiculous bleach blonde streak in his hair and was wearing a plain button-down shirt that made him look almost, grown. The message just said, "Trying." The second message came a few days later. No photo this time. Just, I didn't know how much she lied until I lived without her. I didn't know how to respond to that one. I still haven't. I probably won't. Some things don't need replies. They just need space to settle. Shirley, on the other hand, hadn't said a word. Not to me. Not to Rachel. Not to my dad. She'd gone quiet in that way. People do when they've lost the audience they used to perform for. I did hear she tried to start a GoFundMe. Something about single motherhood. And being abandoned by a toxic family. It never cracked $300. Someone in the comments asked why she wasn't living with her husband, and the whole thing vanished the next day. As for Drew, he filed for full custody. Not temporary. And from what Rachel said, he's got a strong case. Caleb chose to stay with him. Shirley had no job, no savings, and a history of documented emotional instability, thanks in part to her own public meltdown. And then there was the final blow. 2 weeks after the last dinner, I got a letter in the mail. No stamp, no return address, just a folded piece of paper with one sentence scribbled across it in black pen. You finally won. That was it. I knew it was from her. The handwriting gave it away. So did the drama. It wasn't an apology. It was a last gasp. The kind people send when they know they've lost control and they want to believe you took something from them instead of admitting they handed it away. But there was nothing to win. This wasn't a game. I just stopped playing hers. And without me to blame, without Drew to manipulate, without Caleb as her shield, there was no one left to clap for the story she kept trying to tell. The family sees it now. All of them. Even Mom. In her own quiet way. Shirley burned her bridges so thoroughly that even the ones who used to make excuses for her have stopped trying to rebuild them. I don't regret pulling the plug on that tuition. I don't regret cutting the mortgage payments. I don't regret letting her unravel because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is nothing. And for once, that nothing gave all of us everything we've been missing. Peace. Boundaries. A family that actually feels like one. A few weeks passed. Quiet weeks. The kind you don't notice until you realize no one's fighting, no one's texting you in all caps, and no one's walking on emotional eggshells just to keep the peace. It was strange at first. That stillness. I kept expecting something. A message. A new meltdown. Another one of Shirley's desperate attempts to regain control. But nothing came. Then Rachel called me. Drew's final hearing is done, she said. Full custody, no appeal. Apparently, Shirley didn't even show up for the last court date. Her lawyer, the second one, after she fired the first for being disrespectful, stood in front of the judge and said he hadn't been able to reach her in over a week. She was gone. Not literally, just out, disconnected, shut off from the people she used to hold on a leash. Caleb stayed with Drew permanently. He was re-enrolled in school. The university had offered a payment plan, and Drew picked up a second freelance contract to cover it. I offered nothing, and not because I was angry anymore, because I was done. Ellie said Shirley was living with a friend somewhere outside the city. No one knew exactly where. There were rumors she was working at a yoga studio part-time, still telling people about her toxic ex-husband and jealous family. But nobody was listening. You only get to cry wolf so many times before people stop checking for fire. Then came the family reunion, a real one, planned months in advance. No drama, no expectation of chaos. Just food, chairs, music, and everyone showing up early for once. Shirley wasn't invited. Caleb didn't come either, but he sent a photo. Him and Drew grilling burgers on their back patio. He looked taller, older, lighter. He still hadn't apologized for everything, but honestly, he didn't need to. The kid was doing the work now. That was enough. After dinner, my dad pulled me aside. You know, he said, I think she always knew she'd lose if you ever walked away. I didn't say anything. Just stood there for a second, letting that settle. Then he added, You saved this family. I hope you know that. Maybe I did. Or maybe I just finally stopped being the one holding the door open for a person who never planned to walk in and meet me halfway. A few days after the reunion, I got one last message. It wasn't from Shirley. It was from her old email account, which had somehow been reactivated. It was a single line. I never needed your money. I needed your loyalty. I read it twice, then deleted it. Because here's the thing. Loyalty without respect is just servitude. And for years, that's exactly what she wanted from me. But not anymore. Now she's out there somewhere trying to rewrite the narrative with whatever audience she can still find. And me? I'm good. The money's back in my account. My phone is quiet. My family is healing. And I finally get to live without carrying someone else's dysfunction on my back. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the only way to finally win. And this time, I did.